Good afternoon, Pastor Jacob May, Christ Lutheran Church in Gordonville, Missouri. I hope you all are doing great today and in this week. I do have a question though. What's next? You ever ask that question? What's next? What's the next thing we're going to do? What's the next meal that we're going to have? The next thing that we're going to eat? What's next? Well, it reminds me of a story I heard, and I don't know who said it or where it stems from, but the story goes something like this. There was a man sitting on a park bench, a younger gentleman, going through some of his papers, and his laptop was just sitting there on his lap and seemed to be just working fervently. And an older gentleman who was walking through the park was stopping by and asked if he could join the gentleman. Simply put, he was tired and needed a place to sit down. So, of course, the younger gentleman complied. He moved to the end of the bench and allowed for the man to sit down with a comfortable kind of barrier between the two. The older gentleman couldn't help but notice all of the paperwork, all of the books, and everything else that the younger gentleman had with him. So he asked, are you a student? And the young man replied, well, yes, I am. But he didn't want to talk too much about himself, didn't want to seem self-centered, so he waited for the older gentleman to ask a follow-up question. What are you studying to do? Well, the man smiled and said, well, I'm studying to be a lawyer. I'm really looking forward to this opportunity and to help people out. Thanks for asking. And that's really all he said. Then the older gentleman was kind of curious, though. And so he said, okay, well, it's great that you're wanting to be a lawyer, but then what? Well, he said, I guess I'll start by working for a firm that will take me on, and then maybe I can be a junior partner. Well, that's great, said the old man, but then what? Well, I guess maybe I'd like to own my own practice, have people that are partners with me. Then what? The younger gentleman wasn't really sure. He hadn't thought that far in advance. Well, I guess I'll get married, have children. Then what? Well, I guess after that, I'll be older. I'll sell my practice, perhaps retire. Ah, said the old man, the retirement years, these are good years. The young man smiled, kind of nervously awaiting the follow-up question. Then what? Well, I guess it'll just be my wife and I. As the kids are too old to be in the house, they'll move out. And then I don't know, but he knew that the follow-up question was coming. And the old man didn't have to lean over, get close to the man. He shattered the barrier with one question. But then what? The young man looked down. Well, I guess then I'll die. But then that brought up the question. Then what? To which the young man didn't really know what to say. How about you? Then what? We have a lot of then whats. We want to know what's going to happen next. And truthfully, if you follow Jesus, you actually see in all the Gospels, people are asking a lot of then what kind of questions. They might not be asking him specifically, but you know the crowd that's following and the disciples, they want to know what he's going to do next, right? You're going to heal someone. Well, then what? You're going to take away the blindness? Then what? The deafness? Well, then what? You're going to allow somebody to speak who can't speak? Great. Then what? And you just kind of see them hanging on everything that Jesus does, right? And then what? Well, then it gets to an interesting point in John's gospel, where in John chapter 6, Jesus says, I am the bread of life. And then he says, in fact, you can't have life in you unless you feast on me. See, this becomes a little bit difficult for the disciples. Not the 12, but Jesus is surrounded by a lot of disciples, a lot of people who are following. And a lot of those individuals are hearing this word, and they actually say, as it says in John, this is a hard teaching. Jesus, of course, he's going to respond. He says with these words, Do you take offense at this? Then what if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before, if he was the true bread that came down from heaven? Now, certainly they probably think, well, yeah, sure, we'll do that, but they won't have that opportunity. Instead, in faith, they follow Jesus, they will see it. But he's not going to show them now. All they have to hold on to is Jesus' word. Now it says in the gospel that many of them will turn away. They'll no longer follow Jesus after this point. But to the 12, he says, what about you? Are you going to turn away too? And the response is classic. They say, well, no. Because where else would we go? You have the words of eternal life. Might be a lot of questions. Might be a lot of things that we don't get or fully understand, but that doesn't mean that we should turn away. Instead, it's the opposite. We need to go back to him. Go back to the word to hear what Jesus has to say, because there's no other word that brings us life everlasting. So when we hear things that are a little hard to fathom and understand, maybe even just things in the world like death and heartache, debt, political unrest, these are hard words to hear. And we don't always fully understand how God is working within our world or within these words, what exactly he's doing, but let us not turn away. Let's go toward the word. After all, didn't the word come to us? For we know exactly what Jesus is going to do after this text. He's going to come and he's going to die. He's going to suffer at the hands of the people. Why? Because that's how much love he has for you and for me. So we might not fully get it or understand it, but where else should we go? He has the words of eternal life. God's peace to you and to your families.